Baldur's Gate 3 had for a long time an ending problem. You would spend over 100 hours playing this game, making thousands of little choices, and you never got to really see what the outcomes of these choices were. There were even some endings that seemed to be really negative for characters based on these good choices that just didn't make sense. In the last week, we finally got to see the outcome for those choices with the ending epilogues. I have played through pretty much every sort of epilogue that you can in Baldur's Gate 3, and I think I have found arguably the very best possible ending outcome that you can get in the game, and I'm willing to defend it fiercely. So arguably the canon character that you're quote unquote supposed to play in Baldur's Gate 3 is the Dark Urge. A lot of the developers mentioned that this was going to be the only character initially that you were able to play as, but then they opened it up to origin characters and creating your own. Playing through the different origins and the different characters, I do think the Dark Urge is one of the more interesting, and I think if you do play as some of the other origin characters, you just miss out on actually experiencing their story from a third-person perspective. So for the sake of, again, this super special perfect ending, you need to pick the Dark Urge. An even bigger point of contention is the fact that I believe if you are playing as the Dark Urge, the best romance option, hands down, is Karlach. This is a character that is suffering through doing evil things on behalf of an entity that they didn't want to, and playing again through this romance and seeing how Karlach responds versus Shadowheart or Astarion. It's just not comparable. Everything Karlach says is much more empathetic, it's sweeter, it just works out better, and her specific ending, I think, reflects that. As you probably know, if you are a romance option for Karlach, you're able to go into the Hells with her at the end, ensuring that her heart does not explode, and you're able to, in your romantic entanglement, fight the Hells and be together. Karlach can still be saved if Will goes with her and she doesn't have this terrible life all alone, but I think that ending, which was released a few months ago, really is one of the most touching conclusions to a romance that this game can offer. I would also posit that one of the other major choices in the game that needs to go one way is siding with Orpheus and not the Emperor. If you do choose to be really, really close to the Emperor and act as if you're in a romantic relationship with them and then essentially betray them, you get to see what they were really thinking all along, that they use their Mind Flayer powers to entrance and charm the important humans in their lives. And they really were a hidden antagonist this entire time. The Orpheus choice has to be the best one. That being said, I also think it's important to allow Orpheus to become a Mind Flayer and save his life at the end through a persuasion check. If you're able to do this, he essentially puts all of the responsibility on saving the Githyanki in the end of the game on Lae'zel, who accepts it, but he's still around and is talked about in the epilogues despite becoming one of these monsters that all of these characters hate. That being said, we also need to ensure that Lae'zel is following the Orpheus rebel path. If you go the alternative where she's loyal to Vlaakith, you get a very, very depressing ending where she's essentially created as a husk for this Undying Queen. Really, really bad. As for the other characters, I think a lot of it is self-explanatory. You know, for Shadowheart, make sure you fight against the influences of Shar and save her parents. If you do this, once the epilogue happens, you get some really great choices. For Astarion, same sort of thing. Make sure he does not become an ascended vampire and instead remains a spawn after killing Khazad-dûr. For Jaheira and Minsc, essentially just completing their quests and being friendly with them. Give them either two states in the epilogue where it's a good outcome or it's a bad outcome. So that's very, very binary. For Gale, I advocate very strongly that he should not become what he does in the epilogue. If you tell him to take the crown, it's a bad idea. Tell him to make it up with Mystera and he'll have a happy, happy life. For Halsin, it's a lot of the same thing. Just allow him to fix the areas that were plagued by the curses and he is a happy, happy boy. One character that I think maybe is up for debate of the different choices that you should make for the ending is Will, whether or not you allow him to become an adventurer of the blade that continues that life, or to join his father as a Grand Duke in the endgame. I would argue with this ending, if you're already there with Karlach, he's just a third wheel. It's not a good idea for him to hang around. Now, mind you, if you're not romancing Karlach, you need him to be this adventurer so he can go to hell with her and they can work together and have a happy life. Other small additions I would add is obviously you complete every mission in the game. You try to get the best outcomes that you can for the side quests, the most noble outcomes. A lot of it is self-explanatory. Make sure that you have Scratch and the owlbear and that they're available in right before the ending, because they do make an appearance. And beyond that, I do think you'll make all the right choices. Now, let's get into the actual epilogue. The epilogue takes place 6 months after the ending of the game, where the Netherbrain is destroyed and the world of Baldur's Gate is going to be rebuilt. In this ending, the best ending, I believe your character, the Dark Urge, who is now free of his father's insane grasp and is more of just a ward of the god Jurgle through Withers, has been killing denizens of hell with Karlach and is really happy to see all of their friends. When you speak to Karlach, she reveals a little tidbit that I think is very, very vital, that they've actually found together. You guys have found schematics to maybe fix the issue with her heart, and that this will allow her to come back into the world. There's a lot of indicators that this could even be the next DLC, which really makes me believe that this is the ending you should take if Karlach is the center of what this story is going to be. Another very sweet ending is Shadowheart. If you made all the positive choices about her, she's living a quiet life. She has a farm with her parents and she's happy. You know, this is the existence that she kind of wanted. She's not living with constant fear, but she is still living with constant pain. Shar's curse is eternal and still hurting her, but she seems to be okay with it. I would also suggest that at this point you talk to the owlbear, who is really looking for a place to stay. You can either let him stay with Halsin or with Shadowheart, and man, if he stays with Shadowheart, they are both really, really giddy in a way that the druid simply isn't. So I really recommend that ending. If you speak to Gale, he's happy as a professor in Waterdeep. He's mended things with Mystra and his life is good. If you go over to Halsin, he is taking care of a plethora of children from around the plains and is living in the Shadowlands, which are no longer the Shadowlands after the efforts that your character has done to complete that side quest. He's happy, he misses adventuring, that sort of thing. If you speak to Jaheira, she'll mention that she is rebuilding Baldur's Gate. And actually, if you exhaust all the dialogue, she will ask if you want to become a harper, and you can get a fancy little pin, which is nice. Minsk is now working with the crime family that he originally was up against and is trying to ensure that they stay marginally noble. He also is working really hard to help another character, Astarion. So if you completed this ending, he is going to be a hero. He is still a vampire. He's not a daywalker. He needs to feed, but he will ensure that he does it for a good cause with the help of his friends. From there, I think it's a good idea to go over to Will, who is one of the most powerful people in the land now. He's one of the 3 Grand Dukes of Baldur's Gate, if you chose that option, which I think is a good idea considering the different choices that you've made here, and you need to have some figure in that institution trying to keep the peace. And then, of course, we end with Lae'zel, who is not here but sending an astral projection. She is fighting against Vlaakith and is unifying the Githyanki with an old enemy through diplomacy and not through violence. Also, a little super secret thing that you can do, if you put the stolen Githyanki egg into her inventory before you beat the game, she is raising that child as her own and is making sure that they have, you know, a peaceful, prosperous life and they can do whatever they want. In this ending, Lae'zel is the one leading this. She's not just a subordinate of Orpheus, which does happen if you allow Orpheus to live. So there's, again, tiny little nuances here that I would argue leads to the best outcome for these characters and for the story in whole for when upcoming DLC does come. Now, I know this will be hotly contested. I know there's a lot of Astarion stands that are weeping right now, but I'm eager to hear what you think is the very, very best possible ending. You know, we all love this game so much. So the idea that there is something that could be canon the best is a little silly, but I do hope you enjoy.